Alright, so the Warriors have officially been sent to Cancun in 5 games against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I'm not really too upset about this one, considering we never had a realistic chance without Steph, and now that the offseason is officially here, in this video I'm going to go over some of the biggest takeaways I have in this Warriors Timberwolves series, as well as some thoughts about certain things regarding the performances of individual players. My next video that I'm dropping after this will cover the offseason acquisitions that I believe the Warriors need to make. So defensively, when guarding Ant, I thought it was the correct decision for us to come up to touch on the ball screens, and apparently it was reported that the reason why they chose to do this was to take away Ant's 3-ball, which is crazy because Ant is such an explosive downhill athlete. You would think they would try to take away that first, considering whenever they play Ja, they always play a drop, but Ant was a different story. They actually invited him to get downhill a lot more. So this forced Ant to give the ball up and try to make pick and roll reads, to which he did pretty well. There were plenty of moments where he dissected the open man, whether it was in the corner or the outlet to the roll man, and that just broke the Warriors defense down a ton, especially in game 5. In game 5 we were much more aggressive. We were throwing random blitzes at him, and he was handling them very well. He was dragging it out with the escape dribble, and he was just making all the right plays. But when it came to ISOs, we had nothing for Ant. We didn't have anybody who can stay in front of him. It didn't matter if it was GP2, if it was Moody, if it was Jimmy Butler. He was breaking the paint easily, and as you know, that's not an issue that the Warriors can solve. They traded away Andrew Wiggins, who was their best POA defender, so what they ended up having to do is send low man help with Draymond or TJD or Loon, and sometimes even have to hard help and pretty much zone up on Ant. So before Ant can even make his move, the on-ball defender is getting ready to shade or funnel Ant towards the help down in the paint. But Ant is such a dynamic scorer to where he was either putting our guys in the basket or he was euro-stepping around our bigs, and there was nothing that we could do about it. He even played certain guys who were supposed to give us a boost off the floor like Pat Spencer and Guy Santos. When those guys were on the floor, Minnesota was spamming pick and rolls that involved those guys. Ant was just getting everything that he wanted on the initial move. There was hardly any resistance. But the one person that I thought did hang with Ant the most, and should have probably been given the assignment much more, was JK. JK was the only guy that had the lateral foot speed to beat Ant to a spot and force him to use a counter move like a step back, and JK is athletic enough to recover and contest a pull-up 3 from Ant. In terms of Julius Randle, he probably was a bigger problem for us than Ant-Man was. In all post-ups or ISOs, we were approaching it like how we did against Alperen Şengün, to where we weren't aggressive with our help, especially if guys like Draymond, TJD, or Jimmy was on him. But the first problem with all of this was that nobody was able to wall up Randle. He was moving everyone with ease. He was moving Draymond, he was moving TJD, everyone was pretty much like a baby to him. That's how it pretty much felt like. Ball in the mid post, a couple of bump dribbles, and it felt like he didn't need to work for his buckets. The second issue was that they did a horrible job taking away Randle's left hand. It was abysmal because it felt like they didn't even know that Randle is left-handed. He kept driving left every single time, and I didn't understand why they didn't sit on his left hand and force him to shoot floaters or one-legged faders going to his right. I'll live with that than left-handed lays. But the third problem was probably the worst of them all, was the two-man game involving him and Ant-Man or Conley. Any action involving Randle or two of those guys, that gave the Warriors fits, because if they drop, then they're giving up a pick and pop 3 to Randle, and he was straight up shooting the piss out of the ball. If they switch it, then a smaller player will be guarding Randle, and that either means Randle is going to score or get fouled, or we would have to send help and risk our defense being in rotation with how well they shoot the ball or attack closeouts. Me personally, I wish they would have attempted to ice pick and rolls much more to give their defense a chance to preload their help. And the last thing that just bothered me throughout the whole series was how easy they allowed Randle to catch the ball in his spots. I didn't understand why we didn't take a page out of the Lakers book and deny the post. Like, Randle had a harder time posting up the Lakers than he did against us, and we're supposed to be the better defense. Something else that the Warriors did a lot was the inverted defensive matchups at the 4 and the 5. So if you don't know what that means, if Jimmy is a 4 and Draymond is a 5, Jimmy wouldn't guard Julius Randle and Dre wouldn't guard Rudy Gobert. Instead, it becomes the opposite. Dre guards Randle and Jimmy guards Rudy Gobert. If TJD was starting and he was the 5, he's guarding Randle and Dre guards Rudy. And the idea of this was to put Draymond on Randle and ignore Rudy's limited offense. But this quickly backfired on the Warriors because Minnesota can just use Randle as a screener and attack based on the coverages. But when they put Naz Reid into the game, this is where things went haywire, because Naz Reid is literally a top 10 center in the league and he's coming off the bench. And when he was in the game, Jimmy would lose Nas coming off the ball, and JK would get torched in the post because he's too small. Or Jimmy would just be way too weak against Rudy underneath the basket. Like, I didn't understand why Jimmy didn't get up into Rudy and take away his space. If he has a wide open dunk, he's obviously going to dunk it. He's not that trash. But if you get up into him and force him to take a drop step and shoot a post hook, then that's a W because that's not his game. I'm living with Rudy Gobert shooting hook shots. Since Minnesota is a good 3-point shooting team, we obviously had to close out to the perimeter. But the issue here is that since we don't have enough long or athletic bodies to close out and recover, most of the time guys had to leave their feet and sell out on contests. This allowed Minnesota to be able to drive and kick and put the Warriors' rotations in a blender. In game 1, I thought we did a great job running guys off the line and actually peel switching, meaning if one guy gets beat, the next closest defender rotates over, and the guy that got beat would rotate to the guy that helped him. But we weren't sharp with that for the rest of the series, and our zone defense, which is actually pretty good, got exposed badly because of how many shooters they got on the floor. We placed such a big emphasis on not allowing above the break threes by sliding the guy in the corner up, and now that there's a gap on that side, Minnesota was just continuously taking advantage of it. Overall, their roster talent and offensive execution just gave our team a ton of issues, and if they shot 5% better in game 1, they probably would have swept us. Okay, so let's get to the offense now. We obviously need to talk about the Robin of this team, and that's Jimmy Butler. Now, I knew going into the series that Jimmy was not going to have a good series because Minnesota has the personnel to defend him. He likes to get to the rim, and they have guys like Rudy, Nas, and even Randall who can stop him from getting there. But his inability to make pull-up mid-ranges was pretty much the nail in the coffin to his production. Whenever they ran 45 pick and rolls for Jimmy, where Rudy was in a drop, if you don't rise up and shoot a mid-range jumper, then what else are you expecting to do? Even when they ran inverted actions like 41 or 42 pick and rolls, to where they were trying to get Dante or Nickeil Alexander-Walker switch onto Jimmy, and since they were hedging, if you don't shoot a pull-up, you're giving the defense what they want because McDaniels will now still stay on Jimmy, and there's no advantage. Or when they play Nas and switch everything 1 through 5, if Nas Reed switches onto Jimmy out on the perimeter, shooting a pull-up is the antidote because he can sag off and protect the basket, but he also has the length to contest. Everything was predicated on Jimmy taking twos in this series. That's what Minnesota was giving up, and he needed to knock him down at an efficient rate for the offense to survive. And from what I'm seeing, he just doesn't look comfortable taking them, or his shot is just way too flat for it to be consistent. And for Jimmy to be playoff Jimmy, he's got to get that midi down because against certain matchups like this, where they got big bodies to guard him, he can struggle. I thought Jimmy also did a horrible job aggressively and relentlessly attacking smaller mismatches in the post. When they threw him the ball, he wasn't creating space by bumping to score. He wasn't shooting over the top. He didn't impose his size enough. The only time he did any of those things was in game 3, where he took 23 shots and proceeded to not take any in games moving forward. And this is where we get to the elephant in the room, which is Jimmy's passiveness as a basketball player. Now here's the thing, first things first, miss me with the whole "oh he's injured" conversation, because let's not act like he's been doing this since he got to the Warriors and pretty much for the last few years. There are people defending Jimmy saying it's not good basketball for the team if he plays heliocentric ball and just takes all the shots. And Jimmy also says he wants to get his guys involved and he wants to make the right play. Here's my rebuttal to that. Jimmy likes to play slow in the half court. Since his addition, Steve Kerr has implemented more actions for Jimmy on the ball like post-ups, pick and roll, ISOs, etc. These actions are intended for him to self-create, meaning he needs to either shoot the ball or kick it out to an open teammate if they send help. Keyword, if. The problem becomes when a play is being ran for him and he holds the ball for 5, 6, 7 seconds, then proceeds to attack. He doesn't take what the defense gives him. He touches the paint, doesn't even look at the rim, there's no advantage, there's no help, and he forces a kick out to a teammate that's not open. And at this point, there's like 4 seconds left in the shot clock. Either Dre, Moody, or GP2 is caught with a grenade, all because Jimmy decided to play at his own pace and have the offense run through him, all for him to just not be decisive whatsoever. So this is why it becomes incredibly frustrating when Jimmy is passive, because he'll do things where he'll hand the ball off to Draymond or a non-scorer and it just doesn't make any sense. These guys depend on advantage creation to score. They can't create the advantage themselves. And surely it's not a felony to demand the highest paid player in the NBA to shoot more and be aggressive if you're walking home with $60 million, right? But the one bright spot for the Warriors was JK, and salute to him, man. I've made videos criticizing him, and although my judgment of him still stands, he provided the Warriors with excellent firepower, way more than Jimmy Butler did. And I had a feeling he would play better in this series, certainly not this good though, but the reason why is because of the matchup. The matchup was tough for Jimmy because Jimmy is somebody that likes to bump and seal to get to the basket. JK is more so a quick first step and a blow by you type of threat. to where Minnesota's front court doesn't have the proper foot speed to keep up. But his performances were a little surprising, and I'll explain why. The first thing that I noticed was how much tighter he was driving towards the basket, meaning instead of driving wide to where he's taking a wide circular path to the rim, he would drive tighter closer to a straight line, and this would make it harder for Minnesota's backcourt to recover. The second thing is his touch around the basket. JK is known for not being able to control his movement and putting way too much force on his shots going to the basket. But in this series, his balance and deceleration were good to the point where he was finishing very softly at the rim. There were possessions to where he was putting a little English on the ball, which is different. That type of touch is something that he has rarely displayed. And the third thing was his in-between game. JK is statistically one of the worst mid-range scorers in the league. I'm not even lying, the stats back that up. But in this series, not only was he much more comfortable getting to his mid-range pull-up, but his footwork and his elevation and the release on his jumper over the contest of guys like Rudy and Nas was great. All three of these things that I've mentioned are things that JK has struggled with throughout the season. But then all of a sudden, it just started clicking. And to be honest, I don't know what to make of it considering it was not his identity for the longest. And suddenly, it's no longer a problem in the postseason. As for everything else, I mean, the motion offense was toast because of the length that they have to lock and trail and funnel those guys into Rudy. They also switch off-ball screens, but I thought we should have slipped those screens better. Pods was doing a good job of that in certain games, but with everyone else, the execution just wasn't there. But it was also hard to make any of those passes because of how much ball pressure they were putting on Draymond, as well as the entire team. And this is where it ties back to everything that I've been saying, which is the fact that this team lacks rim pressure and roster talent. There's so much space inside the 3-point line with how they're guarding us, and we ain't got enough guys that can make things happen. Alright, so let's get into these individual players. First one up, Buddy Hield. I will be the happiest man alive if Buddy Hield is off my team this summer. Now, before I get into any negativity with Buddy, because there's going to be a lot of it, Buddy was solid when he was guarding Ant in this series. I just have to put that out there. Now, don't get it twisted. He still was twerking out there. It's not like he was doing a great job, but he was engaged on the ball. And I've said this about Buddy. Buddy competes on defense on the ball. He plays with a lot of motor, but he still can't guard because of the things that he can't control. But what's really bad is his off-ball defense, because my goodness, is it atrocious. I can't tell you how many times this man lost Ant on a back cut because bro was ball watching. I don't know how as an NBA player you don't see man and ball. They teach you that in the YMCA as a youngin, to where you have to look at the ball and your man. You don't just look at one person. How do you lose the best player on the court off the ball? Like this man Buddy Hield was doing 360s off the ball. He would ball watch, they would kick it out to his man, and instead of actually getting to his man, he would literally turn around and do a 360 and not even know where his player is at. I mean, how can a player be this unserious? Like genuinely. Offensively, this guy has some of the worst decision making I've ever seen in my life. In the half court, we've already discussed this. This man has no processing speed whatsoever. But in transition is where it's really bad because he just throws the ball away. He'll throw passes to guys that are just not open at all. He'll also take shots that should not be taken in a transition break. Like he'll catch the ball, dribble it quick down the floor, force up an early three, or try to shoot a step back. And kudos to him for his confidence as a basketball player. But there's gotta be a fine line here. He was taking contested layups against Rudy in the paint. Like Rudy was underneath the basket and he still took a layup against Rudy. Like he genuinely doesn't think when he plays. He plays at one pace and just does whatever. Like he deadass needs a brain scan this summer, because if this man wasn't a quote unquote shooter, he'd be selling popsicle sticks and ice cream cups at school parks. Next up, Pods. Now, Pods obviously didn't have a great postseason. He had a good Game 5 versus Minnesota and a good Game 4 versus Houston. But besides that, it's clear that he isn't good enough offensively to chime in as a second or third option for the Warriors. The first thing that I noticed with Pods is that he's not a true point guard. He plays the point guard position, but he doesn't have a polished point guard skill set. Point guards can make any kind of pass in a spot or through traffic, or handle ball pressure up the floor. Pods clearly has issues with both. We played two good defenses, and when I watched Pods dribble up the floor, it was like watching a little kid dribble with his back turned because he doesn't know how to play. The second thing is pick and roll scoring. Pods does this thing where he'll use that stupid hostage dribble to try to keep his defender in the backside, but it never works because he's not the scorer that he thinks. Guys like Luka and Cade Cunningham have the size and the short paint scoring to make that work. Pods doesn't have that size and touch to produce the same results. Now, part of this does lie on the Warriors not doing Pods a favor by gortatting the ball screen. So pretty much Draymond, Jimmy, or Loon, or whoever's setting the screen, needs to clear his man out of the way. Cause if Pods has his man out of the play, the only thing that's stopping him is the big man dropping underneath the rim. But they haven't done that at all, so that's something that they need to use more. But the point is, Pods needs to stop trying to put his defender in jail because he lacks the identity to do so. Unless he can show that he can actually make it work, I don't like him slowing the game down just because, again, he lacks the ability to make it work. The third thing is his finishing ability. Now, another thing that I hate is that Pods keeps spamming that slow step going to the rim. Now, I get the idea of the move. It's actually in my bag. I use it a lot. But it doesn't work for Pods, and it's hurting him because he's not somebody that gets to the rim often. He doesn't get downhill a whole lot to make the defense respect that, and that alone jeopardizes his ability to make use of the slow step. Because the whole point of the move is to take advantage of the defense trying to recover to beat you to the rim, so instead you decelerate and you use that momentum against them. That works for guys that like to get to the rim consistently like Luka, SGA, Anthony Edwards, Andrew Nembhard, etc. Those guys get to the cup a lot. But when you have a defender just riding your hip to the rim, it's best to create contact and bump your defender off balance, or just finish strong at the rim protecting the ball. It's weird because Pods always sells out his body to get rebounds and take charges, yet he's actually afraid to seek contact at the rim. And the last thing is his mentality. He doesn't have a scoring mentality. Oftentimes he's kind of like Jimmy, where he's too unselfish passing up shots. In order for him to take that next step and to take a leap in his career and have a bigger impact on this team, he's gonna need to look for his own. And like I seen Steve Kerr talk about how Pods is not a scorer and how he's someone that does different things, and to be honest, I don't care. You don't have to be a quote-unquote scorer to go score the basketball. Just like how Buddy Hield doesn't have to be a defender to go and defend Ant. All this talk about making winning plays is cool, and I've praised all of it before. I certainly notice it, but it comes to the point where you just need to score. It's that simple. Making winning plays involves doing something to give your team an opportunity to score. You steal the ball so you can play offense. You get an offensive rebound so you can play offense. You take a charge so you can play offense. But nothing will be more impactful than actually putting the ball in the basket. Because at the end of the day, it's all about who scores more points. Impact extends towards scoring as well. And lastly, I want to talk about the remaining specialists on this team, and I'm going to keep it short and simple. Loon and GP2, I'm just over these boys, man. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Loon. Loon has done great things for this organization. Same thing with GP2. GP2 was a fringe role player in the NBA just getting bounced around, and he found a role with our team and he was thriving. But it's getting to the point where it doesn't make any sense to keep these two on this team. Like, GP2 is supposed to be an all-NBA defensive guard, and he hasn't done none. Like, he can't guard nobody. Like, we can't feel comfortable putting him on the other team's best player and actually expect him to bother that player. He had to guard Ant, and he was twerking all over the court. But another issue is that he just can't make a jumper. Like, he's not a reliable shooter. And in the NBA, you can't be below 6'6" and not be able to shoot. You can't expect to be a meaningful role player if you can't shoot as a 6'2" guard. Like Chris Dunn and Lou Dort, who are actually elite guard defenders, can shoot above 30% from the 3-point line. GP2 can barely scratch above 25%, or he'll barely make it to like 30%. The point is, he's not a respectable shooter. And like, I appreciate the connective passing, the slip screening, the rebounding, the hustle. All of that is great, but like, can you make a jump shot, please? The same goes for Loon. Yeah, I appreciate the rebounding, the screening, the grittiness, the defensive hands. All of that is cool, but can you make a floater off of a pick and roll? Or post up a mismatch? Or provide some type of rim protection, please? And the same goes for Dre too, honestly. He's still one of the best defenders in the NBA, but every time he misses a top of the key 3, I just lose years off of my life. Or when he drives to the rim and goes all glass on a layup against a dude that is 6 inches shorter, it gets to the point where it's like, what do you do with that? Like, we can't have too many of these guys on this team. And the sooner we get these specialists off my team, the better things will be. In today's NBA, you can't survive only doing one thing. The only way it will work is if you're like incredibly good at it.